The laughter reached me before I even made it through the doors. It rolled from the grand hall of the historic Fairmount Estate in Savannah, Georgia. Refurbished chandeliers casting gold over silk tablecloths, violinists playing under vaulted ceilings, waitstaff gliding across marble floors. Everything shimmered like a lifestyle magazine. I stepped inside alone. Heads turned, not because I was late, not because I was underdressed, but because in their minds I had no right walking in without someone, anyone, on my arm. There she is, someone near the champagne tower muttered. Wow, my cousin Lila smirked. Takes guts to show up like that. She couldn't even get a +1, my sister Morgan whispered to her fiancé deliberately loud. Pathetic. I didn't pause, didn't blink. I kept walking, steady in heels I'd borrowed from a friend. My emerald green dress wasn't couture. I'd sewn it myself after work. 3 nights bent over a thrift store machine. Rent came first. No nails, lipstick from a pharmacy, but my posture? Steel. The scent of peonies and designer cologne clouded the air. Every napkin was monogrammed. Morgan's wedding was the event of the decade. She was marrying Carter Langston, heir to Langston Capital, and the pride of both families. And me, I was Ava Delani, 35, the overlooked middle child who left home at 22 to build a life with nothing but a community college degree and a job shelving books. I took a seat at table 18, extended guests and overflow. Not a soul looked up, not my parents from their head table, not my younger brother who once promised to protect me. Then came the question, from Aunt Cheryl, leaning from the next table with mock sweetness. So, Ava still single? I met her gaze. Still breathing, still here. She turned away, and I sat, stomach tight, reminded that my invitation was never about inclusion, it was about appearances. Formality. That's all this invite had ever been, a silent reminder of who had made it and who hadn't. But I wouldn't give them the satisfaction of watching me break. And then, it happened. The ballroom doors, massive and gold-handled, swung open with a thunderous boom. The music stumbled. Laughter halted midair. Heads turned like a wave crashing toward shore. The man stood in the entryway, rain still gleaming on the shoulders of his perfectly tailored charcoal gray suit. His hair, slightly tousled, framed a face carved by success and storm. His tie was loosened just enough to seem effortless. He walked in like he belonged, like the marble floors had been laid just for him. And then, his eyes found mine. My heart stopped. Without pause, he moved forward, long, purposeful strides, heels echoing across the marble as every eye in the room followed him. He didn't glance around. He didn't waver. He came straight to me. I stood, frozen by instinct. Before I could speak, he reached for my hand, lifted it with ease, and leaned in with a voice so smooth it curled around my spine. Sorry I'm late, love. I blinked. Then, lower, just for me, play along. He turned to the room with the kind of smile that could end wars. Traffic was a mess, he said, loud enough for every stunned guest to hear. But I couldn't miss celebrating your sister's big day. Collective gasp rippled through the hall. I'm Nathan, he said smoothly, nodding toward my parents and Morgan. Ava's fiancé. You could hear silverware drop. My sister Morgan paled, her champagne flute trembling. Her groom Carter's jaw clenched visibly. My mother looked ready to faint. My father? His brow twitched so hard, I thought his cufflink might snap. Nathan squeezed my hand, reassuring, strong. And in that moment, I realized this wasn't just theater. It was war paint. The beginning of something they'd never be able to explain away. Then came the whispers. Fiancé? Is he serious? Wait. Isn't that Nathan Hale? From Hale Ventures? Ina owns Fairmount Estate. My pulse thundered. Nathan Hale. That Nathan Hale. The man who bought out media empires just to protect his privacy. And now, he was here, holding my hand like it had always belonged to him. Morgan's heels struck the floor hard as she stormed off the stage, gown glittering like ice. She wasn't smiling anymore. Her perfect bride smile, gone. "What the hell is this?" Morgan hissed, barely managing to keep her voice beneath the music. "You brought a fake fiancé to my wedding?" Nathan didn't so much as blink. "Fake?" he asked, voice like polished glass. "That's a bold assumption from someone who didn't even know her sister speaks fluent French, holds 3 patents, and spends weekends mentoring girls in STEM programs." Morgan blinked like she'd been slapped. Then Nathan turned to her groom. "Carter, right? Nice to finally meet you. I've reviewed your Q4 projections. Brave move, betting on that acquisition next year. But I'd reconsider the tax liabilities if I were you." Carter stiffened visibly. I still hadn't said a word. I could barely breathe. I just stood there, wrapped in silence, my hand still in his. Nathan looked at me again, and when he spoke, his tone softened. "You okay?" I nodded, the motion barely registering. "Good," he said gently, as if it mattered more than anything. "You looked so alone when I walked in. I couldn't let that stand." Gasp again, louder now, head swiveling, whispers snowballing. Then my father rose from the head table, voice sharp enough to cut marble. "Nathan Hale, do you really expect me to believe you're dating her?" Nathan's jaw tensed just slightly, but his tone remained calm. "I don't need your belief, and I definitely don't need your approval." My father scoffed. "She's been nothing but a failure," he snapped, waving a hand dismissively. "She walked away from the family, threw away every opportunity. She's the reason her mother—" "Enough," Nathan snapped. The room froze again. Even the band went silent. His eyes narrowed, thunder behind them. "If you think shouting her down or rewriting her story intimidates me, you'll need to try a lot harder." The silence that followed was heavy, almost sacred. Then, softer again, he turned to me. "Can we step outside?" I nodded. He led me through the parted crowd, past champagne flutes and stunned guests, until we reached the garden terrace, lit by hundreds of fairy lights. Once there, I gently pulled my hand away. "Why are you doing this?" I whispered. Nathan looked down, hands in his pockets. "Because I was at the bookstore 3 weeks ago," he said. "You gave me the last copy of Bel Canto." My heart skipped. "You said it was your favorite," he continued, "and you told me to keep it, even though it was a first edition?" I froze. "You said, some stories deserve to be held, not shelved." Then you smiled, and went back to shelving returns, while your coworkers laughed at you for being too passionate. I stared at him. "You remembered that?" "I never forgot," he said. "You were kind. You saw me when I was trying not to be seen." My throat tightened. "And after," he added quietly, "I looked you up. I saw what your family said about you." "I didn't like it," Nathan said, his voice low but firm. "When I found out your sister was getting married tonight and you were listed on the guest registry, alone, I knew I had to be here." I couldn't speak, could barely breathe. "But the way they treated you in there," he went on, his voice shaking now, not with nerves, but with fury. "That wasn't okay. They needed to be reminded of your worth, and I wanted to be the one to do it." Tears burned behind my eyes, not out of sadness, but because for the first time someone saw me fully, and they didn't ask me to shrink in order to be loved. Nathan smiled again, softer this time. "So," he asked gently, "should we go back in?" I looked at him, steadied my breath, and nodded. "Yeah, let's give them something to really talk about." We walked back into the ballroom hand in hand. This time, I wasn't invisible. The air had shifted. Whispers flared up like sparks, but not with ridicule. This time they murmured with uncertainty, curiosity, even apprehension. Nathan walked beside me like we belonged to something grander than the space around us. I could feel the stares of every aunt, cousin, and colleague who once dismissed me as a wasted opportunity. Now they just stared. No one smiled, no one apologized, but no one dared to sneer either. Morgan stood at the front, her ivory gown glittering under the chandeliers, but her face was thundercloud dark. She leaned into Carter's ear, and he descended the steps toward us with a tight, fake smile. "Mind if we talk?" Carter asked. Nathan released my hand, but stayed close. "Depends," he said flatly. "On the topic." Carter gave a forced chuckle. "Look, I don't know what this is, a dramatic stunt for attention, maybe, but we'd prefer to keep things clean. The press is already sniffing around, and I'd rather not feed them a headline." Nathan raised an eyebrow. "Ah, so you're worried that my presence might overshadow your little moment?" "It's their day," Carter said, eyes darting toward the guests holding up phones. "Let's not make it about whatever this is." Nathan turned to me, then back to him. "You're right." He stepped forward and raised his voice just enough. "Ladies and gentlemen, forgive the earlier interruption. I just want to be clear." Silence fell like a velvet curtain. "I didn't come here to cause a scene, but I won't stand by while Ava, my fiancé, is treated like an afterthought by the very people who should have lifted her up." Dead quiet. "But don't worry," he added with a faint smile. "We're not staying long. We've already seen enough." He turned, offered his arm. I took it. We began to walk toward the exit, but Morgan's voice rang out, sharp and bitter. "Oh, please," she snapped from the stage, eyes wild. "This is just some pathetic stunt." If you felt that shift, the moment someone finally stood up for the quiet one, then hit subscribe, because what happens next at this wedding, you won't want to miss it. "He's not your fiancé. You probably paid him." The words landed like a slap, not because they might sway the crowd, but because Morgan believed them. She wanted them to be true. "Tell them," she said, voice rising, "tell them the truth, Ava, that you begged some stranger to show up here just to make yourself feel important." I turned slowly toward her, every breath heavier than the last. But before I could speak, Nathan stepped forward. His voice, when it came, was calm, cold enough to frost the chandelier crystals. "Now," he paused, then, with deliberate clarity, "but I did offer to invest in her nonprofit, the one you all laughed off when she presented it at last year's family fundraiser." Morgan's face went pale. "You remember that, don't you?" Nathan continued, stepping into the silence. "She proposed a literacy outreach program, reading hubs for underfunded schools across Chatham County. She wrote the grant herself, followed up, reached out, and got nothing but silence from the people who should have been proud of her." My mother stood suddenly. "That's not fair." "No," Nathan cut in, sharper now. "What's not fair is watching someone you claim to love get shoved to the back row while you all pose like the perfect family up front." The tension in the room grew thick. Guests looked anywhere but at me, at their shoes, their glasses, their phones. That's when I stepped forward. "I didn't ask him to do this," I said, steady now. "I didn't come here to make a scene. I came because I thought maybe being here meant I still belonged." I turned to Morgan, but I was wrong. She opened her mouth, but I held up a hand. "No more fake smiles, no more pretending this family didn't exile me the moment I stopped fitting your perfect narrative." The lights felt hotter, my voice stronger. "To keep your perfect wedding, your designer gowns, your filtered lives, but I'm done making myself smaller so you all feel bigger." Turn back to Nathan. "Let's go." The ballroom doors closed behind us once more. But this time, I didn't feel dismissed. I felt whole. We didn't speak until we slid into his black Aston Martin, parked beneath the glowing awning of the Lexington Hotel. Only then, as the doors clicked shut, did I finally exhale. "I can't believe you did that," I whispered, half in awe. "That you came?" Nathan looked over, expression warm now. "I didn't know what I'd walk into." "But I felt it that day in the bookstore," Nathan said softly. "Like you were fighting to stay visible in a world that kept trying to erase you." I swallowed hard. "It's been like that for years." He nodded, quieter now. "I know." He shifted in his seat, running a hand through his hair. "Ava, there's something I haven't told you." I blinked. "What?" He pulled out his phone, tapped a few times, then turned the screen toward me. It was a photo. Slightly blurry, angled from behind a shelf. It was me. Inside the bookstore. I didn't take it, he said quickly. My assistant did. Months ago. She was researching candidates for a foundation I'm starting. Quietly. One of the staff flagged your name after reading your article on literacy access. You came to the store to meet me? Or nodded. No agenda, no pressure. But when you handed me that book and smiled like I wasn't a stranger, I knew I didn't just want to work with you. I stared at him. I wanted to know you. The words felt unreal. I didn't mean to lie, he said, but after today, it felt wrong not to tell you. I looked out at the rain now streaking the window. It wasn't pity, I said quietly. It was protection. I didn't know how to accept it. I've never had it. I turned back. You mentioned my nonprofit. How did you know? I read everything, he said simply, all 42 pages. My breath caught. I'd poured my soul into that project. I want to fund it, he said, not just because it's good, but because you are. And for the first time, I cried, not because I was broken, but because I finally felt seen. He reached for my hand. Warm, steady, ground. But Ava, he said, voice gentle but firm, if we do this, your foundation, your vision, it has to be yours, fully, no strings. I don't want press, no headlines. I just want to be the guy who stands behind the woman who changes everything. I laughed, even through the tears. You're unbelievable. No, he said with a quiet smile. I just believe in you. We sat there for a while, the rain tapping softly against the car, Savannah's city lights casting soft glows on the windshield like stars we could reach. Then my phone buzzed. A message from Morgan. You think this is over? That stunt might have worked tonight, but I know who you really are. My stomach twisted. I showed Nathan. He read it, then calmly placed the phone face down. She's afraid, he said, and fear lashes out. I nodded. She's going to try to ruin me. Then it's time, he said, eyes steady. You stop letting her win. By morning, it began. Old college photos. A misquoted blog headline. Rumors that I'd faked everything for clout. Morgan had gone full campaign mode. Nathan didn't flinch. He made a single call. By noon, we stood in a midtown hotel lounge. Nathan behind the mic, calm and clear. For the record, he said, this woman is not just my fiancé. She's the founder of a fully funded national literacy initiative, and she doesn't need my name. She is the name. Ava Delaney. Cameras flashed, reporters leaned forward. Morgan's digital smear job? Obliterated. That night, I sat alone in my tiny apartment. No penthouse. Just peace. I made tea. I breathed. And when Nathan showed up at my door holding that same first edition, he smiled and said, I told you, some stories deserve to be held. This time, I believed him. And I believed in myself. The girl who walked into the wedding alone never walked alone again. I never expected to reclaim my voice at my sister's wedding, but I did. And if you've ever felt overlooked, underestimated, or erased, tell me in the comments. Share your story. Let's stand together. Subscribe if you believe quiet strength can still roar. And remember, you don't have to shrink to fit into someone else's mold. Be seen, be bold. Your story matters, so hold it like it's worth everything, because it is.